Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yatha Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Sya Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sabadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Paran Sahagana Lalita Shivishkam Vitam Sya Om Agyana Timarandasya Gyanachana Shilakya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasma Shri Gurave Namah Gurva Bhistam Supurakam Gurganara Sesha Sambhushitam Chintya Chintya Samasta Veda Nipunam Shri Rupa Patanugam Govinda Abhidam Ujwalam Bharatanum Bhaktyan Vidam Sundaram Mande Vishwagurun Shah Divyat Bhagavat Prem Noe Bija Pradam Devam Divyatanum Suchanda Varanam Balarka Chelan Shitam Sandrananda Puram Sadeka Varanam Vairagya Vidyam Buddhim Sri Siddhanta Nidhim Subhakti Lasitam Saraswatanam Varam Manditam Shubhadam Madeka Sharanam Nyashishwara Shridharam Vanshakopatarubyascha Kripasindubhyevacha Patitanam Bhavanibhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Namo Mahabaranyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namane Gauratavishe Namah. So we're reading from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita by Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, translation and commentary by Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupad. This is Adi-lila, chapter 7, about the Pancha-tattva, Lord Chaitanya and 5 features. I'll begin with verse number 84. Krishna Vishayaka Prema Parama Purushartha Jara Age Trinatuya Chari Purushartha. Religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation are known as the 4 goals of life. But before love of God at the 5th and highest goal, these appear as insignificant as straw in the street. Religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation are known as the 4 goals of life. But before love of God at the 5th and highest goal, these appear as insignificant as straw in the street. While chanting the holy name of the Lord, one should not desire the material advancements represented by religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and ultimately liberation from the material world. As stated by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the highest perfection in life is to develop one's love for Krishna. Prema Pumarta Mahan Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Matam Idam. When we compare love of God with religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation, we can understand that these achievements may be desirable objectives for bubukshus, or those who desire to enjoy this material world, and mumukshus, or those who desire liberation from it. But they are very insignificant in the eyes of a pure devotee who has developed bhava, or preliminary stage of love of Godhead. Dharma, religiosity; artha, economic development; kama, sense gratification; and moksha are the 4 principles of religion that pertain to the material world. Therefore, in the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, it is declared, Dharma projita kaitavotra, cheating religious systems in terms of these 4 material principles are completely discarded from Srimad Bhagavatam. For Srimad Bhagavatam teaches only how to develop one's dormant love of God. The Bhagavad Gita is the preliminary study of Srimad Bhagavatam, and therefore it ends with the words Sarvadharmam Parityaja Mamekam Sharanam Vraja. Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. To adopt this means one should reject all ideas of religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation, and fully engage in the service of the Lord, which is transcendental to these 4 principles. Love of Godhead is the original function of the spirit soul, and it is and it is as eternal as the soul and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This eternity is called Sanatan. When a devotee revives his loving service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, it should be understood that he has been successful in achieving the desired goal of his life. At that time, everything is automatically done by the mercy of the holy name, and the devotee automatically advances in his spiritual progress. So this verse is rejecting Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha, which are normally considered 4 Purusharthas, or 4 goals as the Vedas. But as mentioned here, the Srimad Bhagavatam rejects all these as being materially motivated and cheating. So the goal of one engaged in devotional services is not to attain any of these benefits of the material world, but to develop one's dormant love of Godhead. Panchama Purushartha Premananda Amrita Sindhu Mokshari Ananda Jara Nahi Ek Bindu. For a devotee who has actually developed bhava, the pleasure derived from Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha appear like a drop in the presence of the sea. So these 4 goals of religiosity, economic development, sense enjoyment, and liberation are here compared to a drop in the presence of the sea. A drop of water is nothing in comparison to the ocean. Krishna Namar Phala Prema Sarva Shastra Goy Bhagye Se Prema Tomai Korila Unai. The conclusion of all revealed scriptures is that one should awaken one's dormant love of Godhead. You are greatly fortunate to have already done so. So Mahaprabhu is here talking to the mayavadi sannyasis, and they ask him why he doesn't study the Vedanta Sutra and perform the other so-called duties of a sannyasi. And he said, my spiritual master called me a fool and told me that I would get everything just by chanting the holy name. I was not qualified to study the Vedanta Sutra. And then Mahaprabhu comments, then after chanting the holy name, these symptoms of love for the Lord developed in my person of trembling, perspiration, hair standing on end. And he's commented, then I asked my spiritual master, what kind of mantra have you given me? This Maha Mantra is making me crazy. And then he says, my spiritual master told me that these are all symptoms of love of Godhead, and you are very fortunate, and your advancement pleases me very much. Then he says, my spiritual master said, the conclusion of all revealed scriptures is that one should awaken one's dormant love of Godhead. You are greatly fortunate in having already done so. Premara swabhave kori chitta tanukob Krishnara charana prapte upajaya lob. It is a characteristic of love of Godhead that by nature it induces transcendental symptoms in one's body and makes one more and more greedy to achieve the shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord. Premara swabhave bhakta hasekandegai unmata hoyanache iti utirai. When one actually develops love of Godhead, he naturally sometimes cries, sometimes laughs, sometimes chants, and sometimes runs here and there just like a madman. When one actually develops love of Godhead, he naturally sometimes cries, sometimes laughs, sometimes chants, and sometimes runs here and there just like a madman. In this connection, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami says that sometimes persons who have no love of Godhead at all display ecstatic bodily symptoms. Artificially, they sometimes laugh, cry, and dance, just like madmen, but this cannot help one progress in Krishna consciousness. Rather, such artificial agitation of the body is to be given up when one naturally develops the necessary bodily symptoms. Actual blissful life, manifested in genuineness, spiritual laughing, crying, and dancing, is the symptom of real advancement in Krishna consciousness, which can be achieved by a person who always voluntarily engages in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. If one who is not yet developed imitates such symptoms artificially, he creates chaos in the spiritual life of human society. Swetakampa, Roman Chashru, Gadgada, Vaivarnya, Unmara, Vishara, Dharya, Garva, Harsha, Donya, Etabhave, Prema, Bhakta, Ganare, Nachai, Krishnera, Anandamrita, Sagare, Bashai. Perspiration, trembling, standing on end of one's bodily hairs, tears, faltering voice, fading complexion, madness, melancholy, patience, pride, joy, and humility. These are various natural symptoms of ecstatic love of Godhead, which causes a devotee to dance and float in an ocean of transcendental bliss while chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. Srila Jiva Goswami in his Priti Sandarbha explains this stage of love of Godhead. Bhagavad Priti Rupa Vritir Mayavadi Mayi Na Bhavati Kim Tarhe Swarupa Shakti Ananda Rupa Yad Ananda Paradina Sri Bhagavan Apiti. Similarly, in the 69th text, he offers further explanation. Tadevam Pritir Lakshanam Chitta Dravastasya Cha Roma Harshadikam Katanchids Jatepi Chitta Drave Roma Harshadikeva Nachid Ashaya Shudis Tatapina Bhakte Samyag Avirbhav Iti Gyapitam Ashaya Shudir Namachanya Tatparya Parityaga Priti Tatparyam Cha Ata Evani Mita Swabhaviki Chit Tad Visheshanam. Transcendental love of Godhead is not under the jurisdiction of the material energy, for it is the transcendental bliss and pleasure potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Since the Supreme Lord is also under the influence of transcendental bliss, when one comes in touch with such bliss and love of Godhead, one's heart melts, and the symptoms of this are standing of the hairs on end, etc. Sometimes a person thus melts and manifests these transcendental symptoms, yet at the same time is not well behaved in his personal transactions. This indicates that he has not yet reached complete perfection in devotional life. In other words, the devotee who dances in ecstasy, but after dancing and crying appears to be attracted to material affairs, has not yet reached the perfection of devotional service, which is called Ashaya Shuddhi, or the perfection of existence. One who attains the perfection of existence is completely averse to material enjoyment and engrossed in transcendental love of Godhead. It is therefore to be concluded that the ecstatic symptoms of Ashaya Shuddhi are visible when a devotee's service has no material cause and is purely spiritual in nature. These are characteristics of transcendental love of Godhead, as stated in Srimad Bhagavatam. Savai pumsam paro dharmo yato bhakti radhoksaje ahaituki yapradyatat yayatma suprasidati. That religion is best which causes its followers to become ecstatic in love of God, that is unmotivated and free from material impediments, for this alone can completely satisfy the self. Balohoila paile tumi parama purusharta tomara premete ame hoilan kritarta. It is very good, my dear child, that you have attained the supreme goal of life by developing love of Godhead. Thus you have pleased me very much, and I am very much obliged to you. So it is very good, my dear child, that you have attained the supreme goal of life by developing love of God. Thus, you have pleased me very much, and I am very much obliged to you. So this is Mahaprabhu's spiritual master talking to him. But also, the way it is stated, this is Srila Prabhupada speaking to his disciples, because when Srila Prabhupada came to America and had disciples, he was already 75, or let's see, he was already in his 70s, and his disciples were just 20 years old. So he was more than 50 years older than them. So he had special affection for the devotees, but he's like a grandfather in age. So and here it says Mahaprabhu's spiritual master talking to him. You can see Prabhupada's affection for his disciples who are very young. He says, "It is very good, my dear child, that you have attained the supreme goal of life by developing love of God. And thus you have pleased me very much, and I am very much obliged to you." According to the revealed scriptures, if a spiritual master can convert even one soul into a perfectly pure devotee, his mission in life is fulfilled. Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur always used to say, "Even at the expense of all the properties, temples, and mats that I have, if I could convert even one person into a pure devotee, my mission would be fulfilled." It is very difficult, however, to understand the science of Krishna, what to speak of developing love of Godhead. Therefore, if by the grace of Lord Chaitanya, the spiritual master, a disciple attains the standard of pure devotional service, the spiritual master is very happy. The spiritual master is not actually happy if the disciple brings him money, but when he sees that a disciple is following the regular principles and advancing his spiritual life, he is very glad and feels obliged to such an advanced disciple. Nachagao Bhakta Sange Kora Sankirtan Krishna Nama Upa Deshe Tara Sarvajan. My dear child, continue dancing, chanting, and performing Sankirtan in association with devotees. Furthermore, go out and preach the value of chanting Krishna Nam, for by this process you will be able to deliver all fallen souls. My dear child, continue dancing, chanting, and performing Sankirtan in association with devotees. Furthermore, go out and preach the value of chanting Krishna Nam, for by this process you will be able to deliver all fallen souls. It is another ambition of the spiritual master to see his disciples not only chant, dance, and follow the regular principles, but also preach the Sankirtan movement to others in order to deliver them. For the Krishna consciousness movement is based on the principle that one should become as perfect as possible in devotional service oneself and also preach the cult for others' benefit. There are two classes of unalloyed devotees, namely Goshti Anandis and Bhajananandis. Bhajananandi refers to one who is satisfied to cultivate devotional service for himself, and Goshti Anandi is one who is not satisfied simply to become perfect himself, but wants to see others also take advantage of the holy name of the Lord and advance in spiritual life. The outstanding example is Prahlad Maharaj. When he was offered a benediction by Lord Nrsingadev, Prahlad Maharaj said, "Naibo dvije para durat yaya vaitaranyas Twadvirya Gayana Mahamrita Magnachitaha Shochetato Vimuka Chedasa Indriyarta Maya Sukaya Baram Udvahato Vimudhan." My dear Lord, I have no problems and want no benediction from you, because I'm quite satisfied to chant your holy name. This is sufficient for me, because whenever I chant, I immediately merge in an ocean of transcendental bliss. I only lament to see others bereft of your love. They are rotting in material activities for transient material pleasure, and spoiling their lives, toiling all day and night simply for sense gratification with no attachment for love of Godhead. I am simply lamenting for them and devising various plans to deliver them from the clutches of Maya. Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur explains in his Anubhasha, a person who has attracted the attention of the spiritual master by his sincere service likes to dance and chant with similarly developed Krishna-conscious devotees. The spiritual master authorizes such a devotee to deliver fallen souls in all parts of the world. There are those who are not advanced prefer to chant the Hare Krishna mantra in a solitary place. Such activities constitute, in the language of Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur, a type of cheating process in the sense that they imitate the activities of exalted personalities like Haridas Thakur. One should not attempt to imitate such exalted devotees. Rather, everyone should endeavor to preach the cult of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in all parts of the world and thus become successful in spiritual life. One who is not very expert in preaching may chant in a secluded place, avoiding bad association. For one who is actually advanced, preaching and meeting people who are not engaged in devotional service are not disadvantages. A devotee gives the non-devotees his association, but is not affected by their misbehavior. Thus, by the activities of a pure devotee, even those who are bereft of love of Godhead get a chance to become devotees of the Lord one day. In this connection, Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur advises that one discuss the verse in Srimad Bhagavatam beginning Naitat Samacharaj Jatu Manasapi E Anishvara, and the following verse in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Anasaktasya Vishayan Yatartam Upayunjata Nirbandha Krishna Sambandhe Yuktam Vairagyam Uchate. One should not imitate the activities of great personalities. One should be detached from material enjoyment and should accept everything in connection with Krishna's service. Etaboli ek shloka shikaila more bhagavatera sara e bole bare bare. Saying this, my spiritual master taught me a verse from Srimad Bhagavatam. It is the essence of all the Bhagavatam's instructions. Therefore, he recited this verse again and again. This verse from Srimad Bhagavatam was spoken by Sri Narad Muni to Vasudeva to teach him about Bhagavat Dharma. Vasudeva had already achieved the result of Bhagavat Dharma because Lord Krishna appeared in his house as his son. Yet, in order to teach others, he desired to hear from Sri Narad Muni to be enlightened in the process of Bhagavat Dharma. This is the humbleness of a great devotee. And this is a verse. Here Mahaprabhu said, saying this, my spiritual master taught me a verse from Srimad Bhagavatam. It is the essence of all the Bhagavatam's instructions. Therefore, he recited this verse again and again. Evam vrata svapriyanama kirtya Chatanurago Druta Chitta Uchai Hasati Ato Rodati Rotigayati Unmaravan Nrityati Lokamayaha. When a person who is actually advanced and takes pleasure in chanting the holy name of the Lord, who is very dear to him, he is agitated and loudly chants the holy name. He also laughs, cries, becomes agitated and chants just like a madman, not caring for outsiders. Etarabhakyami dhrida vishvasadori nirantara krishnanam sankirtana kori se Krishna namakabu gauljaya nachai gahinachi nahiyami apanaichai. I firmly believe in these words of my spiritual master, and therefore I always chant the holy name of the Lord, alone and in the association of devotees. That holy name of Lord Krishna sometimes causes me to chant and dance, and therefore I chant and dance. Please do not think that I intentionally do it. I do it automatically. A person who cannot keep his faith in the words of his spiritual master but acts independently never receives the authority to chant the holy name of the Lord. It is said in the Vedas, Yasya Devi Parabhaktir Yata Deve Tata Goro Tashaiti Katita Yarta Prakashante Mahatmanaha. Only unto those great souls who have implicit faith in both the Lord and the spiritual master are all the imports of Vedic knowledge automatically revealed. This Vedic injunction is very important, and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu supported it by his personal behavior. Believing in the words of his spiritual master, he introduced the Sankirtan movement, just as the present Krishna conscious movement was started with belief in the words of our spiritual master. He wanted to preach, we believed in his words and tried somehow or other to fulfill them, and now this movement has become successful all over the world. Therefore, faith in the words of the spiritual master and in the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the secret of success. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu never disobeyed the orders of his spiritual master and stopped propagating the Sankirtan movement. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu never disobeyed the orders of his spiritual master and stopped propagating the Sankirtan movement. Sri Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Goswami, at the time of his passing away, ordered all his disciples to work conjointly to preach the mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu all over the world. Later, however, some self-interested, foolish disciples disobeyed his orders. Each one of them wanted to become head of the mission, and they fought in the courts, neglecting the order of the spiritual master, and the entire mission was defeated. We're not proud of this. However, the truth must be explained. We believed in the words of our spiritual master and started in a humble way, in a helpless way. But due to the spiritual force of the order of the Supreme Authority, this movement has become successful. It is to be understood that when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu chanted and danced, he did so by the influence of the pleasure potency of the spiritual world. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu never considered the holy name of the Lord to be a material vibration, nor does any pure devotee mistake the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra to be a material musical manifestation. Lord Chaitanya never tried to be the master of the holy name. Rather, he taught us how to be servants of the holy name. If one chants the holy names of the Lord just to make a show, not knowing the secret of success, he may increase his bile secretion, but he will never attain perfection in chanting the holy name. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu presented himself in this way. I am a great fool and do not have knowledge of right and wrong. In order to understand the real meaning of the Vedanta Sutra, I never followed the explanation of the Shankar Sampradaya or Mayavadi sannyasis. I am very much afraid of the illogical arguments of the Mayavadi philosophers. Therefore, I think I have no authority regarding their explanations of the Vedanta Sutra. I firmly believe that simply chanting the holy name of the Lord can remove all misconceptions of the material world. I believe that simply by chanting the holy name of the Lord, one can attain the shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord. In this age of quarrel and disagreement, the chanting of the holy name is the only way to liberation from the material clutches. By chanting the holy name, Lord Chaitanya continued, I became almost mad. However, after inquiring from my spiritual master, I have come to the conclusion that instead of striving for achievement in the four principles of religiosity, dharma, economic development, artha, sense gratification, kama, and liberation, moksha, it is better if somehow or other one develops transcendental love of Godhead. That is the greatest success in life. One who has attained love of Godhead chants and dances by his nature, not caring for the public. This stage of life is known as Bhagavat Jivana, or the life of a devotee. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu continued, I never chanted and danced to make an artificial show. I dance and chant because I firmly believe in the words of my spiritual master. Although the mayavadi philosophers do not like this chanting and dancing, I nevertheless perform it on the strength of his words. Therefore, it is to be concluded that I deserve very little credit for these activities of chanting and dancing, for they are being done automatically by the grace of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Krishna Name Jai Ananda Sindhu Ashvadan Brahma Nanda Tara Age Katodakasam. Compared to the ocean of transcendental bliss that one tastes by chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, the pleasure derived from impersonal Brahman realization, Brahmananda, is like the shallow water in a canal. In the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu it is stated, Brahmando Bhaved Esha Chit Pararda Gunikrita Naiti Bhakti Sukham Bodhe Paramanu Tulamapi. If Brahmananda, a transcendental bliss derived from understanding impersonal Brahman, were multiplied 1,000,000 times, such a quantity of Brahmanda could not compare with even an atomic portion of the pleasure relished in pure devotional service. Will not compare with even a drop of that pleasure derived by devotional service. Tvat sukshat karanalada vishudabdi stitashame sukhani goshpadayante brahmani api jagat guru. My dear Lord, O Master of the universe, since I have directly seen you, my transcendental bliss has taken the shape of a great ocean. Being situated in that ocean, I now realize all other so-called happiness to be like the water contained in the hoofprint of a calf. The transcendental bliss enjoyed in pure devotional service is like an ocean, whereas material happiness and even the happiness to be derived from the realization of impersonal Brahman are just like the water in the hoofprint of a calf. This is a verse from the Hari Bhakti Shuddhodaya. Prabhura Mishta Bhakya Shuni Sanyasiragan Chittafire Gela Kahe Madhura Bhajan. After hearing Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, all the mayavadi sannyasis were moved. Their minds changed, and thus they spoke with pleasing words. So before, they were thinking Mahaprabhu was not a real sannyasi, that he was just a sentimentalist, that why is he just dancing and chanting? This is not the duties of a sannyasi. But after Mahaprabhu's explanation, then they were moved. They could no longer think the same way. The mayavadi sannyasis met Chaitanya Mahaprabhu at Varanasi to criticize the Lord regarding his participation in the Sankirtan movement, which they did not like. This demonic nature of opposition to the Sankirtan movement perpetually exists. As it existed in the time of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, similarly, it existed long before that, even in the time of Prahlad Maharaj. He used to chant in Sankirtan, although his father did not like it, and that was the reason for the misunderstanding between the father and son. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says, Namam duskritina mudha prapadyante nararamaha maya parita jnana asuram bhavam ashritaha. Those miscreants who are grossly foolish, who are lowest among mankind, whose knowledge is stolen by illusion, and who partake of the atheistic nature of demons, do not surrender unto me. The mayavadi sannyasis Arasuram Bhavam Ashrita, which means that they have taken the path of the asuras, demons, who do not believe in the existence of the form of the Lord. So the mayavadis are like demons who do not believe in the existence of the form of the Lord. The mayavadis say that the ultimate source of everything is impersonal, and in this way they deny the existence of God. Saying that there is no God is direct denial of God, and saying that God exists but has no head, legs, or hands and cannot speak, hear, or eat is a negative way of denying his existence. A person who cannot see is called blind. One who cannot walk is called lame. And one who has no hands is called helpless. One who cannot speak is called dumb. And one who cannot hear is called deaf. The Mayavadi's proposition that God has no legs, no eyes, no ears, and no hands is an indirect way of insulting him by defining him as blind, deaf, dumb, lame, helpless, etc. Therefore, although they present themselves as great Vedantists, they are factually mayaparita jnana. In other words, they seem to be very learned scholars, but the essence of their knowledge has been taken away. Impersonalist Mayavadis always try to defy Vaishnavas because Vaishnavas accept the Supreme Personality as the supreme cause and want to serve him, talk with him, and see him, just as the Lord is always eager to see his devotees and talk, eat, and dance with them. These personal exchanges of love do not appeal to the Mayavadi sannyasis. Therefore, the original purpose of the Mayavadi sannyasis of Benares in meeting Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was to defeat his personal conception of God. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, however, as a preacher, turned the minds of the Mayavadi sannyasis. They were melted by the sweet words of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and thus became friendly and spoke to him also in sweet words. Similarly, all preachers will have to meet opponents, but they should not make them more inimical. They are already enemies, and if we talk with them harshly or impolitely, their enmity will merely increase. We should therefore follow in the footsteps of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as far as possible and try to convince the opposition by quoting from the Shastras and presenting the conclusion of the Acharyas. It is in this way that we should try to defeat all the enemies of the Lord. Jai Kichu Kohile Tumi Sabha Satya Hoy Krishna Prema Se Pai Tarabhagya Doi. Dear Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, what you have said is all true. Only one who is favored by fortune attains love of God. So the Mayavadis, I've been moved by Mahaprabhu's words, and they say, Dear Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, what you have said is all true. Only one who is favored by fortune attains love of Godhead. One who is actually very fortunate can begin Krishna consciousness, as stated by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to Srila Rupa Goswami. Brahmanda Brahmite Kona Bhagavan Jeev Guru Krishna Prasadi Pai Bhakti-lila Bij. There are millions of living entities who have become conditioned by the laws of material nature, and they are wandering throughout the planetary systems in this universe in different bodily forms. Among them, one who is fortunate meets a bona fide spiritual master by the grace of Krishna and comes to understand the meaning of devotional service. By discharging devotional service under the direction of the bona fide spiritual master or acharya, he develops love of Godhead. One whose love of Godhead, Krishna Prema, is awakened and who thus becomes a devotee of the inconceivable Supreme Personality of Godhead is to be considered extremely fortunate. The Mayavadi sannyasis admitted this fact to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It is not easy for one to become a Krishna-conscious person, but by the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu it can be possible, as will be proven in the course of this narration. So I'm going to stop here. Tomorrow we'll continue. Hari Haraya Namah Krishna Jadavaya Namah Hari Haraya Namah Krishna Jadavaya Namah Jadavaya Manavaya Keshavaya Namah Jadavaya Manavaya Keshavaya Namah Gopal Govindaram Shri Madhusudan Gopal Govindaram Shri Madhusudan Giridhari Gopinatha Marana Mohan Giridhari Gopinatha Marana Mohan Sri Chaitanya Nityananda Sri Advaita Chandra Sri Chaitanya Sri Advaita Chandra Janardan Shiva Sari Gora Bhakta Vrinda Janardan Shiva Sari Gora Bhakta Vrinda Jai Rupa Sanatan Bhakta Raghunas Jai Rupa Sanatan Bhakta Raghunas Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Rasa Raghunas Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Raghunath Echai Gosai Kori Charana Bandhan Echai Gosai Kori Charana Bandhan Jaite Vignana Shamishta Puran Jaite Vignana Shamishta Puran Echai Gosai Jar Mui Taradas Echai Gosai Jar Mui Taradas Tasabar Pada Renu Mora Panchagras Asabar Pada Renu Mora Panchagras Tader Charana Sevi Vakasani Bas Hare Charana Sevi Bhaktasani Bas Janame More Abhilash Janame More Abhilash Echai Gosai Jabe Braje Koilabas Echai Gosai Jabe Braje Koilabas Radha Krishna Nitya Lila Korila Prakash Radha Krishna Nitya Lila Korila Prakash Anande Bolo Hari Bhaja Vrindavan Anande Bolo Hari Bhaja Vrindavan Shri Guru Vaishnava Pade Majai Aman Shri Guru Vaishnava Pade Nachai Aman Shri Guru Vaishnava Pad Padma Koriyash Shri Guru Vaishnava Padma Koriyash Harinam Sankirtana Kohe Narothamudas Harinam Sankirtana Kohe Narothamudas Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Nitai Gora Hari Mo, Hari Mo, Hari Mo, Hari Mo, Nitai Gora Hari Mo, Hari Mo, Hari Mo, Hari Mo, Nitai Gora Hari Mo, Hari Mo, Hari Mo, Hari Mo, Nitai Gora Hari Mo, Hari Mo, Hari Mo, Hari Mo. Jai Saparikara Shishi Guru Guranga Gandharvika Giridhara Ju Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravajakacharya Tara Sadrashi Shimad Srila Bhakti Nirmawacharya Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravajakacharya Tara Sadrashi Shimad Srila Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravajakacharya Tara Sadrashi Shimad Srila Bhakti Rakshidhar Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Bhagavan Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Thakur Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Satchidananda Bhaktivedanta Thakur Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Vaishnava Sarvabhauma Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Rupanuka Guru Bharga Ki Jai. Namachar Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jiva Gopal Bhatta Das Raghunath Shad Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai. Prem Se Go Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasade Shri Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Vishvaparanya Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupad Ki Jai. Srila Bhakti Kusham Ashram Maharaj Ki Jai. Srila Bhakti Tilak Neriha Maharaj Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Ki Jai. Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai. Nanda Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Sri Navadip Dham Ki Jai. Sri Ram Mayapur Ki Jai. Saparshada Sri Nityananda Prabhu Ki Jai. Saparshada Shriman Mahaprabhu Ki Jai. Sri Koladvip Ki Jai. Sri Chaitanya Saraswati Mat Ki Jai. Soquel Sri Chaitanya Saraswati Seva Ashram Ki Jai. Ganga Devi Ki Jai. Tulasi Maharani Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Sri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Shri Radha Krishna Go Gopi Govardhan Sham Guna Radha Kunda Kalindi Yamuna Jo Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. All the assembled devotees Ki Jai. Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol.
Janardan Maharaj ki